That's the Washington Treaty in 1949, and that Washington Treaty still stands, and also what we decided in the Washington Summit in 2024.
Okay, we'll go to just behind the riser, first row.
Thomas Kutschka with Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We've seen a number of attacks recently, hybrid attacks, that have been directly attributed to Russia, including the incident in Poland. How do you think NATO should respond to this? How can NATO deter Russia from future attacks like this on NATO soil? And do you agree with what the chairman of the military committee just said, that NATO nations need to become more aggressive in countering these hybrid activities, so basically hitting back?
Well, first of all, let's agree that NATO was founded as a defensive alliance, and of course that is not going to change. But having said that, we should at the same time have no doubt that we can and will ensure our security, whether the threats we face are conventional or these threats are hybrid. And that's one of the reasons why the leaders, when we came together in The Hague, agreed on a revised hybrid strategy. Because we know this is the reality of today. Hybrid and cyber, they are the realities of today, and we have to confront them. Of course, we cannot always tell you exactly what we do, but you know the strategy, and we will keep continuing making sure that we are safe.
Okay, we'll come over here. Second row, Politico.
Hi. Hello, Victor Jack from Politico. I have two quick questions, if that's okay. The first on the Ukraine peace plan. Apart from the accession of Ukraine to NATO, does NATO have any specific red lines when it comes to mentions of the alliance within the peace plan? And second question on Pearl. As allies look to make the program sustainable into the coming years, can you tell us some of the ideas that you're thinking about in terms of making that work in the long run? Thanks.
Yes, on the first question again, this is all coming from the 28-point plan, and this has moved on. It was good that it was there, because you need to start the process somewhere. We have had a number of meetings, and as I said, when it comes to NATO, and whether that is, when anything about NATO is mentioned in a deal to end the war, obviously that will be dealt with separately with NATO, etc. On Pearl, the good news is that at the moment we are on track. We needed about 4 billion by this time of year. It started in August, 1 billion a month, and we are now at 4 billion. So we still have some work to do on December, but I'm quietly optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we will also get December done. And then for next year, of course, we need to make sure that for the whole year we have at least, again, 1 billion a month to buy this essential gear from the US. And can I stress how essential this is? This is stuff which we do not have in Europe in terms of production and or because of stockpiles. And this includes offensive but also defensive elements in the packages. And one of the things we will be discussing tomorrow with the foreign ministers are how to take this forward. So I put forward some proposals to make sure that where this year it was cap in hand, and I don't mind going cap in hand and happily do that for Ukraine. And so many allies have now contributed. We have seen recent announcements by countries like Norway, the Netherlands, and Canada and others. I think we have now about 2/3 of the alliance participating in Pearl. But we need a little bit more this month, December, and we will get there, and then next year on a more secure footing, so that it costs me less time. But I'm not interested, not important here. If necessary, I will keep on going cap in hand. But we will discuss that tomorrow to get it on a more secure footing.
Okay, and just next to him, the woman in the black jacket.
Ksenia Polska from Deutsche Welle, Ukrainian and Russian. So going back to the membership of Ukraine, which Ukraine believes would be the best security guarantee for it. What other security guarantees could NATO provide to Ukraine? Or what other security guarantees could NATO be part of? What options are on the table now?
Well, of course, I cannot now disclose what is being discussed concretely today, but you've seen some of that debate taking place over the last 3-4 months. And one element of that discussion is the coalition of the willing, under the leadership of France and the United Kingdom, coming together to discuss how, post a long-term ceasefire, or even better, a total peace deal on Ukraine, how to make sure that Ukraine can be supported in a way that Russia will never attack again. So to make again the mistake we did with the Minsk agreement, where basically Russia was willing to try again a couple of years later with the full onslaught, unprovoked in 2022. You've also heard the Americans saying we want to participate in the security guarantees. I think that was a very important moment in August when that happened. And of course, those discussions are still taking place. We now have to bring the war to a point where it ends. And then, of course, we have to make sure that we hammer out all the details. But a lot of work has been done by the Europeans, also working closely together with the Americans to make sure that post the peace deal, we can have security guarantees in place for Ukraine so that they are as safe as possible. Of course, building on the Ukrainian armed forces as the first layer of defense for Ukraine itself.
Okay, we'll finish the end of this row, and then I promise we'll come over here.
Руслана Брянська, Громадське радіо Київ. Secretary General, you met yesterday with Denis Shmyhal, the
Yes.
Ukraine Minister of Defense, yes, and to discuss strengthening Ukrainians' air systems and were any agreements reached?
Yeah, so it was not that we had to reach agreements. It was basically taking stock of the situation. And indeed, air defense systems for Ukraine are, of course, always high on the agenda. The defense systems, but also the interceptors to be used in the systems, through the systems. And this is something which is also central to this Pearl initiative, next to all kinds of offensive stuff. This is an important part of it. There is a lot happening bilaterally, also between European nations and Ukraine, to make sure that Ukraine, and particularly the innocent civilians, but also the civilian infrastructure, is as much as possible protected against these totally crazy onslaughts by the Russians. And we have seen this weekend, again, some people are saying again, a sort of record when it comes to missiles and drones hitting Ukraine, killing people. And our thoughts and prayers are, of course, with those families of the bereaved ones, but we want to make sure that we do everything possible. And this was high on the agenda, not to reach an agreement, but really to take stock of where we are and how we can even do more.
Okay, coming over here, we'll start with Reuters, second row.
Thank you. Andrew Gray from Reuters. Secretary General, does NATO stand by its declaration in Bucharest in 2008 that Ukraine will become a member of NATO?
Well, you have seen the Washington summit outcome, which clearly stated that there is an irreversible path for Ukraine into NATO. You know the Washington Declaration that any country in the NATO hemisphere, that means the Euro-Atlantic, can apply for membership. Ukraine clearly applied for membership, but we also know, as I said, and this is a statement of practicality and a statement of fact, that there is no unanimity within the alliance about Ukraine coming in the alliance. And that's one of the reasons when it comes to a future peace deal, we are discussing how, if not NATO membership, how we can make sure that Ukraine is protected in a way by itself, but also with help from others, so that the Russians will not try again.
Okay, and just next to him.
Hi, Isabel Schäfers, German TV, ZDF. I would like to come back to the peace negotiations because you said that that the plan has moved on and that nothing about NATO will be discussed without NATO. But we all know that the plan can still move on with between the US and Russia. So how sure can you be that NATO will not be part of these discussions? And that does not only include the membership of Ukraine, but also NATO engagement in Ukraine. Will that the outcome be that in the end NATO member countries will have to secure the deal and NATO cannot do anything because it's excluded?
Well, first of all, let's hope that we get to a point where there is a peace deal. And at the moment, it is the Americans very much pushing for that, and I commend them, and we are closely coordinating with the Americans and being helpful wherever we can as NATO to get that peace deal done. And of course, they are, as you know, closely in discussions with Ukrainians. There are discussions today with the Russians. But again, the 28-point plan has moved on, that's clear, and I can assure you when it comes to all aspects of a potential future peace deal on Ukraine, we are closely coordinating with the Americans.
Okay, and the third row here, Bloomberg.
Andrea Palacciano from Bloomberg. Thank you, Secretary
Hi.
General. You mentioned that anything pertaining to NATO and the negotiations will be dealt with separately. Can you confirm this has started already, in which format, and who will be at the table? Thank you.
No, but let me just stick with that statement, because everything I say about the peace process might not be helpful. So the less I say about it, the better it is. But this is just to make sure that you understand, and that, of course, also coordinating closely with the Americans, we make sure that, that this is a separate issue to be dealt with.
Okay, and just next to her, we'll go to Greece.
Hi, Secretary General Maria Vasiliou, Tanea, Greece.
Hi.
I suppose you're following the discussions among Europeans on the reparations loan. I would like to ask you whether you share Belgium's position that the reparations loan might be an obstacle to the peace plan discussed. And do you have the feeling that there is some sort of inconsistency among Europeans? Because on one side, it is claimed that supporting Ukraine is of utmost importance for European security, and on the other hand, it's so difficult to agree on how to support Ukraine. And secondly, what do you think about the fact that NATO members, such as the UK, were not included in the safe mechanism? Thank you.
Okay, please accept these are two questions about the EU, and I have my hands full trying to steer this alliance in the right direction with all my colleagues. And I have to leave the EU to my highly respected colleague Ursula von der Leyen and, of course, Antonio Costa, the leaders of the European Union, who do that in an excellent way. And we closely coordinate also on the issues you just mentioned, obviously. But I think I should not comment about internal EU matters.
All right, and then just next to her, BBC.
Thank you, Secretary General, Sergei Gerashko. I was wondering if you could confirm that you are familiar with the current new version of this peace plan that Wyckoff has brought to Putin right now, and whether this plan concerns in any how NATO's security, whether there is anything that NATO countries should be concerned about in it.
What I can say is that we closely coordinate with the Americans and, of course, also with the Ukrainians on this whole peace effort. It started with President Trump, breaking the deadlock by engaging with President Putin in February. And he has consistently been working on this. And I think we're all better off for that, because it was only the American president who was able to break that deadlock in the end, and he did. And therefore, these talks are now underway. We do not yet know whether they will be successful. We will try everything we can do to be as positively involved as possible. But it also means that I have to talk a little bit in a restrained fashion when it comes to all the steps, what we know, do not know, what is exactly happening, because it is not helping the process. So that's why I'm holding off a little bit on answering your question.
Okay, and we're going to come here in the